Hello, hello everyone. John Martinez here, Midwest Revenue Group. Happy to be here. Welcome back after the Thanksgiving holiday. Real quick, I want to make sure the audio is coming through loud and clear. Can I have a raise of hands if you can hear me just fine? Awesome. Beautiful. Let me know if any of that changes. But we'll go. This is one of my favorite lessons today, so we're going to jump into it. We're going to have a good time with it. And I think you're going to be a little better equipped to handle some of the situations you get into at the end of this hour. So absolutely awesome. First of all, I see I've got a couple questions already on my screen. If you guys have any questions or anything you want to cover today, make sure to let us know if it's something that the whole group can benefit from and it fits into today's training. We will definitely go after that. If not, we will address it one-on-one with you, but we'll get to it either way. So, hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving. Today's lesson is on overcoming resistance. So when I say that, I mean dealing with prospects who might be a little bit reluctant or resistant to share information with you. They might be a little standoffish. They might be a lot standoffish. They might be, pretty short with you. Almost as if you've done something wrong in some cases. So raise a hand if you guys have ever dealt with prospects like that. Okay, quite a few of you. All right. So I'm glad we're hitting this today. To Mr. John Sellers, great question. We'll see if we can get to that at the end of today. If not, we'll address it one-on-one with you. So let's go ahead and jump into this. Principle of scarcity. Hopefully everyone watched the video. By the way, we are spinning up a new website where everything's going to be really streamlined. So after we get through this training course, all the lessons, for anyone who stays with us or utilizes the training, these webinars, the videos, the recordings of what we do, everything's going to be housed in one website, one login. That's it. So everything will be there. So something to look forward to. We've got it about built out. We're testing it now. So it'll be a little less clunky for those who stay with us and put more salespeople or just do the sales training again. So first question for you today. What's the principle of scarcity? From the videos you guys watched, what did you see? What's the principle of scarcity? In your own words. It's a pretty common principle in influence. Okay, getting a little slow today, that's okay, but we got a few trickling in. People are attracted to what they're worried about losing. So, John, that's a great way to put it. Limited availability. So, yeah, so we see it often, we see it every day, right? Limited availability in products and services that are being sold to us. Farewell concerts. Gold, silver, jewelry. If there's a limited amount of anything, it tends to get more and more expensive. We want it more, right? Also, the guy or the girl who plays hard to get, same thing. The opposite sex, or who plays hard to get, usually they become more attractive, right? So the less available something is, the more we go after it. That's the principle of scarcity, and that's really what we build this whole lesson on. So things seem to be more valuable when their availability is limited. What's psychological reactance? Really, it's just an extension of that, okay? People react against anything that impinges on their freedom, right? So we just saw a ton of this. We see a lot of very heated discussions, a lot of passion, a lot of emotion around this presidential election, and around certain topics within the presidential election when people felt like their freedoms were being impinged upon. Does that make sense? So this also includes commands, opinions, and suggestions. In other words, when we feel like we're losing control, we're losing an option, we're losing one of our options, we're losing the ability to make a decision, any of those things, we tend to fight back against it. Right? When we lose any freedom, something we're used to having or something we want to have, we fight and we fight hard. Does this make sense to everybody? Raise the hands if it makes sense to you. It's a pretty common, awesome, thank you, pretty common principle of influence, but this is what this is all built upon. So as we extend, as we extrapolate this a little further, what we're going to focus on today is how psychological reactance or the principle of scarcity, how we use that in a sales situation. How do we use that in order to get our prospects who are pushing back hard to lighten up a little? How do we use that for our prospects who just seem to be fine and just kind of don't care one way or the other? They really have no motivation. How do we use that to get them to move towards a yes, right? And if our prospects leaning towards a no, if they're pushing back hard, if we're losing them, if they're getting a little upset or don't want to talk to us anymore, how do we use this principle to get them to reverse course and go the other way? That's what we're going to talk about today. And what we're going to do is we're going to really impinge upon their freedom to make a decision. We're going to start to take away, most of you probably heard about the takeaway, right? We start to take away their option to say yes, and what we're going to see is they start fighting for it. So pretty simple techniques we're going to jump into here. I like to think of it one other way is Newton's third law of sales, right? To every action there's an opposite and equal reaction. It's the same as in sales. When we start pushing our prospects towards a no, they're going to start pushing themselves towards a yes. This might not sound like it makes a lot of sense, but you probably see it happen every day now. The opposite way though, right? The more a salesperson tries to push you into something, don't you start to push back a little bit, right? The more, when you run into those sweetheart deals and it makes complete sense and you are just trying as hard as you can to convince your prospect to take action, and it seems like they just keep pushing back harder and harder, and even though it makes 99% sense, they're just hanging on that 1% of it that might be a little iffy, right? We see it every day, right? So we're going to learn how to use this principle today. Hopefully you already learned in the video, but we'll make it even more clear how we're going to use this going forward. So out of all the sales trainings out there, and I've done about them all over and over again, the one I like best, the illustration I like best that explains this is going to be Sandler's illustration. He calls this pendulum theory. So in psychology, it's called psychological reactance. David Sandler, the late David Sandler of Sandler Sales Training, calls it pendulum theory. Every sales training, or most good sales trainings, have some version of this, right? We even know it as reverse psychology when we look at it with our kids and things like that. I've got a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, and I literally have to tell them the opposite of what I want them to do every time we eat. You are not going to eat that macaroni and cheese today. That's the only way I can get my son Jackson to eat whatever we have for dinner. Eat it, eat it, eat it. No, no, no. Big fight, big fuss. You know what? I'm going to take it. I'm going to eat it. Absolutely not, Dad. That's mine. And he starts digging into it. We think that we outgrow that type of stuff as we get older. We just learn to manage it. We learn what's acceptable in society and what's not acceptable, but it never actually leaves us. And we are going to use that force within us that fights back to get really whatever we want. So here's how Sandler puts it with his pendulum theory. Here's the illustration. So imagine what you see on the screen there is like the bottom half of a clock, right? So that bottom number is 6, just like it would be on an analog clock. You got 3 through 9 there. And that pendulum hanging right in the middle, that's the neutral position. So if that pendulum is where your prospect is during your sales cycle. So sometimes they might be hanging at that 6 position, that neutral position is what we call it. Okay? Not positive, not negative. When they're sold, when they're ready to go, they're ready to sign, they're at a 3 position. And then the opposite, right? At the 9 o'clock position, that's when we've got a very, very hesitant, reluctant prospect. And that it's basically a no. Okay? So this is pendulum theory. And what pendulum theory states is this. You always want to be 1 or 2 steps closer to that 9 position than your prospect is. So here's what that means. If your prospect's a neutral, we obviously want them to go closer to that 3, closer to that sold position. Okay? How do we get them there? We can't pull them. We go negative. We're at a 7. So here's what that means. If a prospect says something like, hey, I don't know, you can come out, show me what you got. I really don't need to make a decision. We go a little bit more negative and we start pulling towards a no. Hey, you know what? I'd love to come out, but maybe the timing's not right. I got a feeling that no matter what I offer you or what we talk about, you've already made up your mind and it's a no. Well, no, I didn't say that. They start to convince themselves and push themselves towards that yes. So wherever a prospect is on this pendulum, if they're neutral, we're going to be a little negative. If they're number 4, if they're enthusiastic, we're going to question that enthusiasm a little bit and make them sell themselves, make us tell us why it makes sense. So psychological reactance, going negative, overcoming resistance, the whole foundation this lays on, the tactic really that I want you to learn, and it's the same tactic, you'll use it over and over, it just sounds a little different no matter where you're at in this thing. You're always going to be a little bit more negative than your prospect. You're going to slightly tug on them towards that 9 or no position, and psychological reactance will take over, and they're going to push themselves towards that sold position, okay? So yeah, William says, that's how I get my 2-year-old to eat. Thanks for presenting the lesson. I'm new at this. So yeah, it's part of how we make decisions, right? And again, anytime, talking about my 2-year-old again, so we've got a playroom. I will watch a toy in that playroom sitting on the floor, same position for 6 months. No kid looks at it. No kid wants anything to do with it. It'll sit there, unused. Nobody wants it. But if one of my children goes and picks it up, the other one is like the Flash. It'll see that my other child pick up that toy, and automatically now it needs it. It has to have that toy, right? We've seen this, right? You don't want it until it's gone. This is what we're going to use. This is really, really powerful, and it's really, really scary. I know this is one of the scariest lessons we teach, and people are going to be very reluctant to use the lesson itself. I get that. What I'm going to ask you to do after today's lesson is try it out. It doesn't have to be in a sales scenario, right? Could just be with a family member, a friend, anyone, an acquaintance, anyone you talk to, any situation. Just start playing with it just a little bit to see what kind of impact it has. And if you like what you see, if you feel in control, if you start learning how to use it, then I'm going to invite you to use it in other places of your business as well. So here's what it sounds like. Okay? This is what it sounds like. If someone's in that position 4, enthusiastic, you might hear something like, hey, I've been looking for something like this a long time. This looks pretty good. How would we use this tactic to push them even closer to that yes? Well, we'd say something like, hey, I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing it with me. But something in me, it sounds like you might not be 100% sure. We pull them a little towards the no. This is extremely powerful. What happens in this specific situation is usually one of 2 things. If there's an objection or a concern, this is where it comes out. Well, actually, I'm still a little worried about, I'm still thinking about. Or if there's no objection or concern left, they talk themselves from that 4 position into a 5 position. And they go, no, actually, and they start telling you why it makes sense. No, actually, I'm pretty sure about this. It's what I need. It's where I'm trying to go. It makes a lot of sense. The price is right. That's what happens. So using psychological reactance is extremely powerful because it's going to, number 1, help uncover concerns and objections. And number 2, help your prospects push themselves into a yes position. So when we start this training, we always talk about, we're going to train you on how to get more deals without being pushy or manipulative. Yeah, we're actually going to push a little bit, but we're going to push towards the no. Right? We're not going to be that pushy salesperson who pushes towards a yes. And when we push towards the no gently, in a nurturing fashion, what we'll see is that our prospects volunteer their concerns and objections. We don't have to dig for them. And they sell themselves and push themselves towards a yes. So here's what I'd like to do now. As you know, we always split this training up into application and understanding. I just want to make sure you understand the concepts. I want to talk through these just so we can start to hear the words coming out of our own mouths. So if there's any volunteers in the audience, what I'll do is I'll unmute you, and all I'm going to ask you to do is read one half of this graph. So I'll be the prospect, I'll say one thing, and then you just read the other side of the graph where it's what you say. Just so we can start to hear what this feels like, what it sounds like. I'm not going to put anyone on the spot. You don't have to come up with any ways to go negative on your own, but simply just want to read through this. So do we have any volunteers who just wouldn't mind helping me out with this? All right, Deborah, first one to volunteer on the spot. So yeah, Deborah, I'm going to unmute you here. Let me know if you can hear me. And
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That would have been the better question, right? So great. So Deborah, we're going to start at position 5, and thank you so much for helping out. And I'm going to read what the prospect says, and all you have to do is read what you can say in response to that. Deal?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So, hey, Deborah, listen, sounds good. I'm pretty open-minded. You can show me what you have.
Well, I might not have anything. Can I start by asking you some questions about your situation?
Beautiful, beautiful. So how many of you guys get that question? And Deborah, we'll go through one more if you don't mind. Thanks for helping me out. So how many of you guys on the call get the kind of question, hey, why should I do business with you? What do you got? That's how we answer it. We make sure we stay out of that salesperson's box by saying something like, hey, you know, I don't know if I have anything for you, and I don't know if I am better than anyone you're talking to. Is it okay if I just ask you a few questions and we can figure out if there's any reason why I am or I'm not? All right, so Deborah, let's go to the neutral position. I'm going to read what the prospect says. You read what you say. Hey, Deborah, listen, I kind of want to think about it. I'm not sure.
Sounds like you have no interest.
Okay, there's one way, and then the second way.
Okay, sounds like you've already made up your mind and there's nothing I can do to change it.
Beautiful. So thank you, Deborah. I appreciate it. Everyone give Deborah a virtual round of applause. So thank you again, Deborah. Everyone's saying great job. And applause. So thank you for everyone who's cheering her on. Absolutely. That's what we do. So let's look at that one a little deeper, guys. Hey, I'm going to want to think about it. It's going to scare us to death to say something like, hey, you know what, it sounds like you might not have any interest, or hey, it sounds like you've already made up your mind. Doesn't our gut say, well, hold on a second, I know I have what you need, right? Isn't that what our gut says? But what this forces them to do is either volunteer their objection or concern, or start to move themselves in that neutral position and start telling them the reasons. Well, no, I didn't say I didn't have any concern. Well, why I don't know, fill me in, where are we at? Well, I need something, I don't know if the timing's right. I don't know. We continue the conversation and we start to push them towards that yes. It's extremely simple. So I kind of want to check understanding at this point. Out of everyone on the call, if you feel like you might not understand how to do this yet, but if you understand the concept, can you let me know by raising your hand? Okay, about half, a little more, so we'll dig in a little bit deeper, okay? I'm going to read the next two, then we're going to go through some exercises, and I think it'll help too. I'm going to show you some examples too. So, negative, prospect might say something like, hey, listen, you could come out and see me, but probably not doing anything. Or a negative prospect might sound something like, hey, listen, I've had a bad experience. I already got a quote from a company like yours before. Instead of trying to push them towards a yes so they get defensive and shut you down, maybe you shouldn't consider this. Hey, listen, sounds like I'm the last person in the world you wanted to hear from today. Then we simply be quiet and we let psychological reactants do the magic. Hostile prospect, why do you keep bothering me? Why do you guys keep calling? Listen, I'm so sorry. Last intention of mine in the world was to bother you. It sounds to me like no matter what we could offer for your property, no matter what we could do, no matter how quickly or slowly we closed, you have no interest in ever selling that place. Oh, I didn't say that. What do you mean? Well, that's how we open up that conversation. That's how we deal with prospects who are not at a yes yet. So, again, I know that my biggest challenge with this group, with every group we go into, is that this is really uncomfortable, and that this is very, very difficult sometimes to do when everything in you is saying, am I going to talk them out of a sale? I want to let you know I use this in almost 100% of the sales I do. And it's personally, for me and for some of our top students, been an absolute game changer. So we practice what we preach. And this works not only face-to-face sales, over the phone, but also email, text messages. We use it wherever we can. Here's what it sounds like. Here's an email. So prospect wanted to get into, asked about the sales training, right? It's a lead, a prospect. So I said, hey, here's some basic information about the training. Today we finalized dates. Now I'm pretty sure the timing's not right for y'all. Maybe some other reason it's just not a fit for what you're looking for, and that's okay. I did want to make sure I got this out to you, though, just in case. I try not to make too many assumptions. So I start right from the beginning. Let's go. I'm taking it away. Let's go negative. Hey, here it is. Here's the dates. Something in me's telling that the timing's not right for you, or for some other reason, it's just not a fit. I'm breaking that salesperson. I'm getting out of that box. I'm going for the no from the start. What was the response? Hey, I think we are in. Let me know what the next step is. We're going to get to a lesson on non-committal language, words like, or actually, I think we did that last week, right? Happy ears, non-committal words and language, or the week before. We had off last week for Thanksgiving. So, non-committal words. There's an example. I think we are in. My radar went off, and I said that is non-committal language. I think is not a commitment, so we need to question that. And I'm going to go negative some more. My response? Hey, the next step would be to get you onboarded, but I'm not sure we're there yet. Sounds like you might not be 100% certain. You know, I wouldn't expect you to be. There's my two examples of going negative and my questioning non-committal language. Okay? Here's my response. We've never had sales training before, but we like the CG connection, and no long commitment is an easy sell for us. Looking forward to it. He's in. Do you see how not pushing for the yes, using nothing but going negative, which we're learning this week, and questioning non-committal, which we learned last week, the prospect closed themselves? Does this make sense, everybody? You see, when you go negative, it forces the prospect to uncover their own concerns or objections, or push themselves towards the yes. Does this make sense? Okay. Another example, guys, we worked on, this week I was working on a project for clients, an autoresponder series. So 2 days ago, as I was going through it, I kind of posted and said, hey, I'm working on this autoresponder series. Anyone else working on them? Here's some best practices. And I just made a post to add some value. No other intent at all behind it, right? It's just I'd done the work. I thought I'd share it with my Facebook friends, and it kind of blew up on me. So when it did, people started asking, can we get in on this? So what did I want to do? Didn't want to sell it. So, hey, listen, I'll build 26 email autoresponder string for distressed sellers. Cost is $2,400. Here's my 100% guarantee. I promise you it's not worth it. Unless you can close a sale over it within the next 3 years or something. Got another response, and I went negative some more. Yep, listen, really just trying to talk a few people out of it and thin the herd a little bit by setting the price at $2,400. That's way too much. Why in the world would anyone pay that much for an autoresponder set? I went for the no. I went negative. I tried to talk people out of it. Okay? What was the result? What do you guys think the result was of that? For everyone who's scared to use it, because I know I was for years. What do you think the result was? Over the top? Really good? Well, for something we weren't planning to sell, by taking it away, we made about $24,000 in the last 24 hours. Not selling a thing. Okay? I think we'll probably hit close to 50,000 over the next week by telling people this is too much. Why in the world would you ever pay this much? Here's what happened, okay? What do you think the prospects thought? They immediately thought, why in the world would I pay that much? No, that isn't too much. And they started to, the emails I got was, hey, listen, saw your post, 2,400 is not too much because, and they started telling me the math. Because if I could just get one customer to commit in 1 year, I'm making 10 to 15 grand on a house. This is simple, right? They started selling me, pushing themselves towards a yes. Not me selling them, saying you need to do this, here's the features and benefits, but why in the world would you do it? That's too much money. Don't spend that much money. Psychological reactance kicked in, and everyone on the other side of the Facebook, the place their brain went was to, hold on a second, who are you to tell me it's too much money? Listen, I know how to run my business, and if I do X, Y, and Z, the math works out. This is a no-brainer. Okay? So when I say I'm committed to this way of selling, it makes everybody comfortable. I am, because it helps prospects come up with their own reasons why it makes sense to do business with you. And I mean, I can honestly say over the last 5 years, this one tactic has probably been worth multiple 7 figures to my business. Another email. Hey John, thanks for the info, looks great. However, my only thought or concern is what sort of impact will this have on my business? Do I need it? I know a couple guys in my market that do deals. One guy's kind of a jerk when meeting with sellers, all numbers, all business. And the other guy is shy, stutters a little, etc., but they both do deals. Guys, how do you think, what kind of response? Let's get in on this one. How would you, knowing what you know about overcoming resistance now, psychological reactance, what can you say? Using the lesson we're learning today in our response, how would you respond? I'll give you guys a second to just type up some just quick. It doesn't have to be the full email, but just give me an idea. Just a high-level overview. How would you respond? Probably don't need it. Sounds like anyone can do deals. You know, it sounds like you're not ready to do this. Yeah, absolutely. So here was my response. You guys are nailing it. Hey, Pete, maybe you don't. If you're not walking away from deals thinking, why didn't I get that one? Then I'd say you absolutely don't need it. If you're not losing on price, you definitely don't need it. And if you're not getting maybes, thinking overs, or dealing with prospects going dark, then this is not going to do you any good. Man, it sounds like you got it dialed in already. You're winning the deals you want, or at least the ones you need. So I'd say keep doing what you're doing. Don't waste your money on something like this. It only makes sense for me to offer help if you need it, and it sounds to me like you don't need it. Make sense? Guys, what do you think Pete's response was? John, everything you said in the first paragraph describes my wholesaling business. Those scenarios do happen to me. And you're not walking away from deals thinking, why didn't I get this one? Then I'd say you absolutely don't need it. If you're not losing on price, you definitely don't need it. And if you are getting maybe think it over as you're dealing with prospects going dark, I can see the value in your services. When's the next class? Pizza customer. Isn't that insane? When you take away, when you use psychological reactance, it forces prospects to go, hold on, you can't take that away from me. And it forces them to go through the thought process of, does this make sense? I got to figure out if this is a good thing or bad thing before I don't have the choice to make it all, before it's off the table. And they sell themselves without me having to say anything at all. Hey, those scenarios do describe me. I can see the value in our service. Now, did I say, here's the value in our service. You're going to get better at this. You're going to get better at this. You're going to get better at this. I said, listen, you don't have these problems, and you don't need my service. He said, hold on. I have those problems, so I see the value in your service. Let's get moving. Guys starting to see the power in this concept. Raise a hand if you can see the power of psychological reactance in sales scenarios. All right. So just a little offshoot to this lesson, okay, takeaways. Same concept. We use scarcity, one of the strongest principles of influence, or as a psychologist would say, psychological reactance, or as you or I would probably say, reverse psychology. But here's how we use that same concept when we ask questions. So anytime we ask a dangerous, well, let me just start with the questions on the screen, okay? Which question, I'm going to put 3 up on the screen, is in the form of a takeaway, just to see first if we have a basic understanding of what a takeaway question is. So is it number 1, hey, I'll bet you have similar problems, don't you? Is it number 2, hey, do you have any problems like that? Or number 3, you probably don't share any of these problems. So in your world, this conversation would probably sound like, hey, listen, I help people who need to get rid of a house, but for some reason or the other, having trouble doing so. I bet you got that same problem, don't you? Or, hey, I help people get rid of houses who are having trouble doing so. Do you have any issues like that? Are you going through that same challenge? Or, hey, I help people trying to get rid of their house for one reason or another, difficult time doing so, but my gut's telling me you don't share any of those types of problems. So unanimous there, number 3. So I feel good about the understanding in this lesson. Lots of times when we get to this point, I see 1, 2, and 3 all over the board. You're right. You probably don't share any of these problems. And what do you think the prospect responds with? 1 of 2 things. No, you're absolutely right. You just identified I have to come up with something else, or I've got no way to help this person. If I'm not solving any pains, no deal. If I'm not helping them capture an opportunity, no deal. You know right off the bat. Or they are going to jump right into exactly what you can help them with. No, actually, that's exactly what I'm going through. And how do you follow up? What do you mean? Can you tell me some more? You're right into that diagnostic drill. Prospect calls in. Hey, I got your postcard. I'm not really looking to sell, but I got the card and just wanted to see what's your offer. Hey, listen, thanks for calling in. Listen, I don't want to waste your time. Usually we help people that are looking to sell their house for one reason or the other. Probably not a best fit for you if you have no intention of selling your house. It sounds to me like, really no matter what we offered on the house, how we did business, how quickly or slowly we bought from you, it sounds to me like you don't have a lot of interest right now in selling. And that's okay. No, I didn't say that. What do you mean? Well, what's your offer? I don't know yet. I'd have to ask you a few questions to really dig into where you're at and what you're trying to get done, what a good offer would even look like for you. Does that even make sense to do? I mean, I know you're not looking to sell now, so I don't want to waste your time. So question, when do you go for the no? When do you use a takeaway? When do you go negative? When do you go negative? When do you go for the no? When do you use a takeaway? So now that we understand the concept, my question to you, what I want to dive into next is, how do you know when to use this? Here's when you know. Anytime you seem to get stuck, and you know the stuck feeling I'm talking about, when your prospect's kind of resisting your questions, pushing back, short one-word answers, you start to go negative, or you use a takeaway. Anytime you need to change the momentum of the conversation, prospects starting to go to a bad place. Listen, I've only got a few minutes. I don't blah, 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 blah. You can tell, oh, I'm losing this one. We go negative. Whenever you have to ask a potentially dangerous question and you don't know what to expect from your prospect, you go negative by using a takeaway. So let's do a quick example of what I mean there. We all have questions we want to ask our prospects, and there's some of those questions that our prospects are pretty reluctant answering. Sometimes it even gets them upset. Those questions are things like, how much do you own the house? What's your mortgage? Those types of questions that we ask that sometimes you kind of brace yourself. You ask it and you're thinking, all right, is it going to be one of those people who just tell me, like doesn't even faze them? Or is it going to be one of those people who get really offended and say, whoa, 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 that is none of your business, right? Those are dangerous questions. So how do we ask a potentially dangerous question using a takeaway? Here's what we do. We don't ask the question. Instead, we tell them they're not going to tell us the answer to the question. Let me repeat that. Don't ask a question because they'll push back. But we know prospects push back. So let's simply tell them that they're not going to answer the question or don't know the answer to the question. Sit back and let them correct us. Sounds like this. Hey, listen, I know you just started looking into this, so I'm going to guess you have no idea what the value of the houses in your neighborhood are or remotely what you want out of yours. And then I just shut up. That's psychological reactance. Instead of saying, how much do you want? What do you owe? I say, hey, listen, I know you're kind of calling me from the postcard. If you're like most people have no idea what they even owe on the house anymore. I'm guessing you're in the same boat. No, I know exactly what I owe. Oh, but you're not willing to share that with me. That's 140 grand. Psychological reactance. Use its power in your favor. Prospects are going to push back. We push back. Whenever we're pressured hard, sometimes we're pressured hard and we know that something may be in our best interest. Hey, let me see a raise of hands after this question. How many of you people have ever resisted doing something you knew was in your best interest because someone pushed you so hard to do that? A boss, a spouse, a family member, a friend. You've got to go here. You've got to try this. You've got to do this. And even though you knew it was in your best interest, you fought back against it. You pushed back. Just in spite of them. Right. We all do. Everyone does. That's psychological reactance. I want you guys to realize when that's happening to you. Realize that happens to everybody. And use that in our favor. Not in a sneaky way, but to help prospects uncover whether or not they really should do business with you. They're going to be pushing and fighting against you the whole time. This is the way we level the playing field and make them think, all right, is it worth it or not? It might not be. It might be. I'm willing to bet many of you guys are losing deals that really it's in their best interest. They would be much better off by doing business with you and getting whatever this is behind them. But you just couldn't get them there. This is how we win those deals. So that's how we know when to use it. Anytime we're stuck, prospects are resisting us. Anytime we need to change the momentum of the conversation that's going the wrong way, whenever you have to ask a dangerous question and you don't know what to ask or what you don't know what to expect from your prospect. So let's jump into some exercises. As we do this, I want you to remember the harder you push your prospect to admit they have a problem, the more reluctant they become to acknowledge it. The goal of this exercise is to help you craft takeaways or ways to go negative you're going to use in response to some of the more common statements, objections your prospects have. So we'll go through some scenarios, and in each one of these we're going to do it a fun way. In each one of these, you're going to get a chance to first play the old school hard sell salesperson of the past. We'll have a few laughs, and then we'll try our hand at going for the no. I want you to see the big distinction between pushing for the yes and pushing for the no. The old school hard sell salesperson that makes us all uncomfortable, and then maybe a better way to do it. So let's start by looking at a neutral prospect. Let's suppose you've got a neutral prospect who says, hey, listen, I'm not sure if we're ready to sell or to buy, whether you're on the acquisitions or disposition side, right? I don't know if we're ready to buy or sell right now. Might not make sense for us to get together. What would that old school hard sell salesperson say in response to this comment? So I'll give you guys some time. I mean, just think of, that old school car salesman-y, and it's not that car salesmen are bad, they just have that reputation, right? I've met some fantastic, some people really at their top of the game in that industry, because it'll test you, it'll put you through your paces. But what would that old school hard sell salesperson say in response to that? So right, I get that one would be a good time to meet. Well, it can't hurt to meet, let's just set something up. Of course you're ready. This is a great time to buy, sell right now. So if you heard, let's just meet, is what Brian says. So if you heard that from your prospects, and let's flip the table. You're the prospect, and that's your salesperson pushing, pushing, pushing. How are you responding? What would go through your head? What would you do? Most people would come up with an excuse if they knew the salesperson couldn't get over to kind of wrap up that call. But what would you say or do? Just curious. You say, hey, I'm not sure it's time to meet. Not sure it really makes sense. They say, come on, let's just get together. It makes sense. You're probably going to love what you see when we get together. Let's just get together and meet. What are you going to say as the prospect? You personally, not what do you think others would say, but what would go through your head? Some of you might just give in and meet, right? High pressure situation, you don't like it, you just want it out, you give them what they want, and then you cancel, or you push it back, or you go into it just very reluctantly, right? Or some of you are giving me excuses. Got to check my calendar, call back, let's go ahead and evaluate it, and then come up with an offer, blah, blah. So that was from the salesperson point of view. So yeah, what I'm getting here is basically one of two things are going to happen. That will push some people into an appointment, guarantee it, absolutely. But they'll either go into that appointment with a high rate of pushing it back or canceling, or if they keep it because they're a person of their word, they're going to go into it with a tremendous amount of trepidation. So, now that we talked about what the old school hard sell salesperson would say, probably in response to this comment, using psychological reactants, what's one way we can approach this? There's 1,000 different ways, but let's just toss them out there. What are some different ways we can approach this? Trying to use psychological reactants in our favor. Okay, good. Right. So I'm seeing a lot of people going slightly negative, right? You don't want to go hard, and no one is for the no. Hey, I think you're right. It doesn't sound like you have any, oh, I lost it, any need here. You know what? You're right. Why would you ever sell or even think about meeting with me to discuss selling? William Wilson, that was textbook. You tossed it right back at him. That is, we get to this lesson later, instant influence. You uncover the one reason why they would, any internal motivation. So two concepts you said. You know what? Probably right. Why would you ever even think of meeting with me to discuss selling? Well, I know I have to at some time. Yeah, but it doesn't sound like it's very important right now. That's kind of a big deal. Well, what makes you say that? Well, here's what's going on. You see how you transition right into the diagnostic drill, how you dive right in with a couple of times going negative and a couple of those simple, vague questions to dive into that diagnostic drill. Mark says, hey, you're probably right. We're probably not the right avenue for you to go at this point. Awesome. So, and I'm gonna add on to what William said. William tied that up beautifully. So after you take it away, the best way to get it back in there is with a simple question of, but why would you? This can be done many different ways. I like to use, now that it's over. So what I do is I verbally signify that the sales call's over. I take the prospect, if they're feeling any sales, that they're in any type of sales scenario at all, I end it. I say, you know what? Sounds to me like it just probably doesn't make sense, and that's perfectly okay. Hey, Bill, now that it's over, I verbally signify sales call's over. But this is really where it just starts. Hey, now that it's over, can I ask you a question? If you ever did set aside the time to meet with me to talk about selling your house, why would you? If you ever decided that it was getting close to being time to consider selling your house, what would make you think that way? What would happen? Why would you? Well, blank. Really, why'd you say that? Blank. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? How long has that been an issue? Starting to tie it all together again. Guys, where are we comfort-wise with this? I know we're just getting into it. We've got 15 minutes left of application, but how are we feeling? Is it starting to make sense, come together? Is everything starting to kind of, we're putting a couple pieces together, so is it starting to gel for you, or are we very, very confused? Awesome. So just because we end the call doesn't mean we end the call. I like to call that ending the call to start the call. Hey, listen, sounds like you have zero interest in selling, and that's okay. They might come back right there and say, whoa, 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 I didn't say that. Or if they don't, hey, now that it's over, can I ask you a question? If you ever did, why would you? Some variation of the why question. If you did, why? The only thing that will come out of their mouth is not what you want them to say, but internal motivation that already exists in them. They will volunteer their reason for taking action. Now, it might not be a strong enough reason for them to take action. It might be. They might just need it explored a little deeper with them until they go, you know what, let's do this. So Dean says, do we use this approach out of the gate or when they start pulling back? So good question, Dean. So I'm going to revert back to a couple slides back where when do we use this? So we use going negative. We use this whenever our prospects are going the wrong way. So they're starting to say, no, no, no. They're going towards that no. We know they're going the wrong way. Okay? We use this when they're stalled out. They're not going towards a yes, towards a middle. They're kind of disengaging from the conversation. You kind of lost them. Okay? So when they're not moving, they're not going towards that yes, they're stalled out, or they're going towards the no. That's when the alarm should go off that, hey, it's time for me to do something. Okay? Hey, you know, I'm not sure this is a good fit. Hey, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I appreciate your candor there. You know, it might not be. My gut's telling me that, you know, based on everything we've talked about so far, no matter what I paid for this place, no matter how we did it, how quickly, how slowly, even if we helped you with packing and clearing stuff out and finding, no matter how we put this thing together, my gut's telling me you are not moving. Not in the next year, not in the next 2 years, not in the next 3 years. You are staying put. No, I can't stay here for 2 years. Why not? Well, pain, 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 pain. What do you mean? This. How long has that been going on? This long. What in the world have you tried to do about it so far? This. Well, how long can you hang in there? How long can you just keep things the way they are? Not long. But it doesn't make sense to talk about it right now. Well, maybe it does. Why? I can't do this anymore. So we use this whenever, sometimes it is right out of the gate. We use it whenever they're going the wrong way or they're stalled out. We use it, and going the wrong way might be that they're slightly leaning towards a no, or it might mean they're full-blown getting hostile. They're pushing back pretty hard. So we're still, so let me see. So Dean says, okay, so if they are asking buying questions, do we still use the approach or the advanced questioning? So I know this gets slightly complex right here. So let me break it down pretty quickly. And we have, when we wrap up all these lessons, I do one lesson on if-then scenarios, which breaks this all down. Where if your prospect is doing this, you do this. If the prospect is doing this, you do this. So here's what you want to do. Have the regular conversation, start with an advanced agreement, go into a vague question and try to find out what their problem is, ask a few more follow-up questions to try to get them into impact. They'll get there naturally if you just ask a variation of, well, why is that? How long has that been going on? A question like that a few times. And at any time during the process, whether it's at the beginning, the end, the middle, at any time when your prospect starts going towards a no, starts pushing back, anytime you're losing them, that's when you use this. So it's not use it at the beginning, use it here, use it there. It's they're not doing what you want them to do. They're going away from the yes, or at least not even moving towards it. They're stalled out. Start tugging towards that no. Hey, listen, I appreciate you let me come on out and kind of talk about what we do. But can I be honest with you? It looks to me, I do this a lot, and I don't know if I'm just boring the pants off of you. I've been known to do that. My gut's telling me you're pretty disengaged because you don't really need to sell right now. You really have no interest. Am I close, or am I just reading the situation totally wrong? I'll stop the conversation and start going, no. I get the feeling that this isn't the time. Something's not right here. It's not the time. You're not ready to sell, or I said or did something that rubbed you the wrong way. Should we just stop here? When you push for the no, remember one of two things happen. They reverse momentum and go towards the yes, or you uncover whatever's holding them back, those hidden concerns and objections. Should we just stop here? It sounds like you have no interest in selling. It's not that. You said something earlier about closing really quickly, and I have no idea where I'm going to go, so I don't think I could do this. Advanced questioning. Hey, I'm glad you brought that up. So what exactly about that do you mean too quickly? Can you kind of fill me in on that? Well, yeah, here's the situation. So we start to just use all these concepts throughout. I told you, very complex at first. It'll get easier and easier. And really, we're through the bulk of the material. There's some deal killers we're going to talk about and things like that. But really, a lot of our time spent left together is going to be spent going over the same stuff over and over to get you from this point where it's like, oh, it's so much information. When do I use what? To a place where you're like, all right, they use this, I do this. They do this or say this, I do this. And you learn how to guide that conversation exactly where you want it to go. You learn to read your prospect. We'll even get into reading their body language and when to use this based on where their feet are pointed or what they're looking at or what they're doing with their hands. How to display the right body language while you're doing it. So we go pretty deep, but it's supposed to be confusing at this part. It always is. I'm glad you guys are asking the questions because it means you're really thinking deeply about it. Hang in there. It will gel. So let's do one more of these to really get a better grasp of going negative, since that's today's topic. Another neutral prospect. Let's say another one says, send me some information, I'll look it over when I have some more time. How do we use going negative? Or first, what's the old school salesperson say? I almost forgot about that. What's the old school salesperson say in response to that comment? And it might be the exact same answer you just gave me, right? A lot of these are going to sound the same. When I go negative, I probably have 3 or 4 phrases. I use the same one every time. So don't concern yourself with, I have to come up with these very creative ways to address each situation. No. They're going negative, you start taking it away. Hey, it sounds like you have no interest. Hey, sounds like I've said or done something that this just isn't a fit for you. Timing's not right. I'm not sure what it is, but you're not ready. So yeah, the old school salesperson, why do you need more time? Right? Well, hey, why don't we just sit down together, look at this stuff over? I think you'll really like what you see. Hey, I completely understand, but let's go ahead and set the appointment. What should we say instead? What can we say instead? It's your world, guys. It's your sales calls. You drive the leads. You pay the money, so you handle them however you want. But if you were to decide to use psychological reactance, if you were to decide to use this tool, what would you say? And if you noticed, I'll give you a second while you type up your answers. When you start doing this, I told you it's going to gel. Did you guys notice that I just use those concepts when communicating with you? Some of the concepts we learn about. Hey, it's your world. I can't make you do any of this. You pay for the lead, so you're going to do with them what you want. But if you decided to use this tactic, what would you say? I can tweak that just a little bit. If you decided to use this tactic, why in the world would you? So here's some answers. Sounds like it may not be the right fit. Good job. new age, I'm super busy too, and I respect that. But if I was something really, if it was something really important, I would get to it. Doesn't sound like this is too important. We might get back to you in 6 months. Good. Yeah, I get what you're going with there. So, hey, listen, I know you're super busy. I respect that. Same here. Sounds to me like this just isn't high on the totem pole for you, not that important. So, I can cross you off my list. It sounds to me like you're not selling, not buying, not moving forward. I'm sure. I'm gonna. Let's see here. I'm not sure I'm gonna send it, but if I get time, I'll try. I get a feeling you're not actually interested. Jamie, great. And then, see, we don't even have to ask a question. Then we go silent and we let the truth come out. Isn't that what we're going for? We let the truth come out. Now, when you do this, just remember to be nurturing, right? Don't sound like you're upset or angry. So tonality plays a big piece. So listen to the difference between these two. Hey, listen, I'm not sure I'm going to send it. If I get the time, I'll try to do it. I get a feeling you're not even interested. Compared to, hey, I'm going to try, but I'm not sure I'll get around to sending it, but I'm going to try if I get time. Listen, I get the feeling that, and I could be wrong, but that you might not actually be interested. And if that's the case, that's okay. I don't want to send you a bunch of stuff if there's no interest. William says, hey, I've got a long-term follow-up probate situation that's coming to an end. In the traditional ways, high chance to lose it. I'm going to respond to email by saying, you know what, we've been talking for a really long time now, and you know I can get this done with absolutely no hassle, but I completely understand if you have a ton of offers higher than mine, that you would, why you would ever go with me. So, good, William. So, William, why don't you email me after this, and we can tweak that a little bit and try to get the best possible response out of that. But I love where it's going. Beautiful. I think you're using that very well. I'm going to respond by saying something like, you know what, we've been talking a long time. You know I could get it done with no hassle, but listen, I understand. If you've got a ton of offers higher than mine, I'm not sure there's a reason why you'd ever go with me, or some variation of that. So we can dive into that after this if you'd like to. So very good. Let me jump. Last 2 minutes. Let me get to more negative one. Or how about this one? Tough prospects. Hey, fine, what's your best offer? Hey, you sent me a postcard, what's your best offer? I'd probably toss in a softening statement here and then use a takeaway in response to this question. So, hey, what's your best offer? Hey, glad you asked that. We always get that question right out of the gate. So that's a softening statement. Can you guys think of it? I'm going to press you a little bit here. Can you think of a takeaway? We got 2 minutes left we could use in response to that question or that demand. I know I'm making you think here. So as you type them up, here's a couple. Hey, listen, glad you asked me that. I was hoping you'd ask me it. Great question. I love it. But honestly, I'm not sure it makes sense for us to even buy that property yet. Hey, glad you asked. Or, hey, I was hoping you'd ask that. Or, hey, great question. Love that you came right out of the gate with it. Happy to give you my offer. It doesn't matter that if it's my best offer, though, right? Hey, glad you asked. More than happy to give you an offer. You don't need my best offer, though, right? No, I want your best offer. Happy to do that, but I probably need to ask some questions about the property and your situation to get you the best price possible. I can get you an offer, the best offer. If you just want any offer, I can get that to you right now. It's 100% up to you. No, I want your best offer. Is it okay if we take a few minutes to ask you some questions? Jamie says, sounds like you're becoming a pro with this. I probably can't give you an impressive number. Or if yes, why didn't you take offers on any of those? I don't know. I don't even know that's a property that matches our criteria. Awesome. So good. Softening statements, remember, those are always great everywhere whenever someone says a statement or asks a question. So glad you asked me that. Hey, great question. Absolutely love it. Listen, short answer, yes, I can get you an offer in the next 30 seconds. Quick question though, Socratic question. Does it matter if it's our best offer or just kind of a middle of the road offer? No, I want your best offer. Okay, I can't do that. I can give you an offer, but to get our best offer, I got to find out a little bit about the house, the property, how quickly you want it to move, and things like that. So your choice. I can kind of give you a middle of the road offer I feel safe with. It's going to be lower than our best offer. Or if you got a few minutes, I can give you our best offer. Sounds to me, though, like you're just in a pretty big rush and our best offer doesn't matter. Guys, we're out of time. I'm 1 minute over. The question I have for you is, did this help today? Every time we get together, I want to make sure that it was a good use of your time. If we ever have a lesson where you feel like it was an hour wasted, it's something I need to address and apologize for. So if there's anything else you want added in, I know there's a question at the beginning I didn't get to. If you just email or Voxer me, I'll handle that with you one-on-one. There just wasn't a really good way to segue that into what we were doing today. I think that was from Mr. Sellers. Guys, thank you so much for everything, for attending and all the participation. You make it really easy. Have a great day, everyone. I'll talk to you soon.